Hey everybody, this is Mike Bono from the North Andover Athletic Association, and you are listening to the Nightly News Podcast, the show that brings you inside the lines of North Andover High School athletics. I am once again joined by my co-host, Al Apperti. Hey Al, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing fantastic. How's your summer so far?
Top notch.
Top notch. Awesome. We have an exciting show today. We have a very, very special guest, Mr. Bill Jensen. I was going to say Rassinen. Mr. Bill Jensen is joining us, and Bill is one of the founding members of the North Andover Athletic Association, and we are going to learn all about the beginnings of the NAAA and how it got started, why it got started. But before we do that, Bill, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mike. Bill Jensen. We moved to North Andover in the early 80s. My kids all grew up here, went to the high school. And fortunately, because of the NAAA, they were all able to participate in sports and activities at the high school, which what might not have been the case if it hadn't been for the founding of the NAAA.
Oh, that's great. And currently your daughter, Lisa Rassinen, is the head coach at for the girls soccer team.
That's correct.
At the high school.
She's been coaching at North Andover for, I think, 16 years now.
Wow.
Yep.
With a lot of success.
Yeah, exactly.
With a lot of success. Thank you. Yeah.
She
also played locally at Merrimack College.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was a two-time All-American in soccer at Merrimack College.
Wow.
Yeah, so her soccer lineage goes back a long way.
It's great that she's staying in the game and teaching the next generations, which is awesome. So, Bill, as I said at the beginning, you are one of the founding members of the North Andover Athletic Association. So when I go into the Secretary of State database for the state of Massachusetts, and I look at the Articles of Incorporation for the North Andover Athletic Association, it says William Jensen, founding member, which is really cool. So it would be if you could just take us through. How did you get involved? Why did the North Andover Athletic Association get established in June of 1991? How'd that all work?
Thanks, Mike. Well, in the town meeting in May of 1991, the school committee, Dr. George Blaisdell, the superintendent, put together a budget for the town to approve. And there were some issues with the town not wanting to spend as much money on the school budget. So what happened is, I think the school committee took a calculated risk, and they cut out all sports and activities at the high school out of the budget, feeling that the town would never ever approve a budget without high school sports and activities. Well, much to their chagrin, the budget was approved with no funding for school activities. And what people don't really know is when the NAAA, even though it has the word athletics in it, what we did is our mission was to fund what we considered all extracurricular activities, which included sports, but it also included the band, National Honor Society. How about a yearbook? How about going to high school and not getting a yearbook at the end of your senior year?
All of that was
cut.
That's crazy.
So I got a call from Brian McNally, who was the athletic director at the time, and Brian knew me quite well because I was involved in a lot of programs at the high school as it related to athletics. At the time, I was the president of the Soccer Association, but I also helped out with the summer basketball programs. So Brian and I were friends, and he called me up and said, "You got to come to my office. I'm having Jack Gaffney, who's the president of the Boosters Club, and the three of us need to talk on what we can do because we really don't want to lose athletics and activities at the high school." So we got together, and it was decided that I would form a committee to try to find out the feasibility of raising money to fund these programs.
And Bill, back then nobody was paying like today. They pay $300 a sport.
Yeah,
Nobody
there was no user fees.
No user fees back then, right?
Yeah, we had that was the time when user fees actually were created.
Okay.
But at the time they were nominal fees. I think it was $50 or $75 a sport. Football and hockey were a little bit more expensive because they are a more expensive program. But we got together, and it was mid-June, I think, of 1991. And I said, okay, give me a week and I'll see what I can do. The word got out around town, and a gentleman whose son had already graduated by the name of Paul Sullivan called me up and said, I think I can help. And Paul was a recently retired IRS agent, and he said, I think I have some ideas. Are you willing to meet with me? And I said, absolutely sure. He happened to be the neighbor of Al Roberts, who was a friend of mine, who was an attorney in town. So the three of us met on his kitchen table, and that night the NAAA was really born. We filled out the articles of incorporation, and through Paul's contact, we were able to get a charitable organization through the IRS, all the paperwork signed, sealed, and delivered within 45 days.
Wow.
In the meantime, while they were doing that, it was my job to create if you will, a committee or a group of an inner circle group to figure out how we were going to raise money. And I have to say that Emmett Goggins, who was the principal at the time, and Brian McNally were really, really good, because I wasn't trying to run the school budget, but I said, I need to know what the numbers are to raise money for this organization so we can fund it. And they said, whatever you need, we'll give you what the school budget was going to be. And within that 45-day period, we developed a committee, we developed a mission, and the mission in the first year of the NAAA was to make sure that we had enough money to fund athletics and activities at the high school, because we felt that was an integral part of the learning process at any high school, not just North Andover.
Sure.
And I know that you gentlemen have children that have benefited from the experience at the high school. Well, I had 3 girls that were raring to go. And
So your goal was to fund 1 year, to raise enough to fund 1 year of athletics and activities?
that's correct. We started out 1 year at a time because we didn't know what we were going to be up against. What I didn't realize is it was going to be a second full-time job for me.
Right.
At the time, I was happened to be a CFO of a company, and I did have some time where I could adjust my schedules. But we had an inner circle of about 10 people, and I was saying to Mike, if you're ever going 114 and you're going towards Middleton, on the left, right by Boston Road, there's a big red barn. I think it's the Boston Farm or something like that.
Boston Hill.
Boston Hill Farm.
Yeah.
Well, that building, that was the old youth center, and they moved it down from the old center to that location. But we met every Monday night for 2 hours to try to develop this program. And I would be remiss, and I know you're always going to miss names when you try to name people off. We had about 8 or 10 people that were really involved. And besides Paul and Al, there was Bruce Butterfield, Joe Marie Allen, Jim Pappas, Noel Hayes, Al Perry, Brendan D'Alessandro, Pete Weefers. Some of them had kids at the high school, and some of them didn't even have kids at the high school, but they were going to be at the high school. So that's how it got started. And like I said, we developed a committee to raise money.
And you said, so over the course of 2 years, this group raised $240,000.
Yep.
I mean, this is 1991 we're talking.
I know. It's a lot of money.
No social media.
Right.
No, I mean, the internet was like in its infancy, so it was really probably no use to you guys and girls in that. So That's so. Take us through, because we could use some fundraising help. How did
Well,
you raise $240,000?
I'd be interested in helping you. Well, what we did is, we this group, we sat down and we actually developed a business plan, believe it or not, because I said, I was the president, Paul was the treasurer because of his financial experience. I said, we have to run this like it's a business, because if we don't, we're going to fail. So we, if you will, decentralize the group. Everyone had a different. We had a publicity person, we had a family fundraising person, we had a larger scale fundraising person, and we just worked as a group. And every week we met, said what's happening, where are we going with this, and so forth. And we had a lot of creative ideas. And the one thing I said to the group is, you're going to get a lot of phone calls because we're going to put your name out to the town. And just listen. Not every suggestion for raising funds is going to be a good one, but you have to listen, because there's going to be some gems in there. Mm-hmm. And one of the gems that we have, and I'm not sure it still doesn't exist, is Noelle Hayes came up with an idea of recycling old sports equipment. Mm-hmm. So she had a ski and skate scale every year. We started out because it was in the fall, so we had a lot of interest in that. I happened to, one of the people at the high school, their daughter was NASA, and it was NASA Ford in Lawrence. Mm-hmm. So, being the shy person that I am, I went up to NASA and I said, we need a car. He said, what are you talking about? He said, we need to raffle a car off. He says, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to give me a car. And he laughed just like you did. But we ended up getting a car at less than invoice. We sold tickets for $100, and we announced the winner at the halftime of the Thanksgiving Day game.
Wow.
Excuse me. Believe it or not, that fundraising alone was almost $20,000. Wow. Because people said, well, I'll spend $100 to get a car.
Yeah.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what was maybe the biggest one, not like that, not like a raffle, but like a one-time donation for that.
I think the biggest thing we did is we said, look, we need to get the parents involved. And one of the ways to get parents involved is to come up with a creative way for the parents to get recognized for their contributions to the association. Mm-hmm. And we need it quickly. So we came up with the idea is we had everyone that donated $500 or more would get a season ticket for their family for all sporting events, so there was no admission for football or basketball. But we'd also put up a plaque in the field house with their name on it. Mm-hmm. So that Brian agreed that once that got up there, it would be in the trophy case and would never be removed. So their donation of $500 or more would have been memorialized, in that case. And of course, we had people. Most of the people on the committee wrote a check for $1,000 to get us started, but we had a lot of people. And then Jim Pappas, as the publicity guy, says, "I have a better idea. Why don't we put their name in the paper?" So I went down to the editor at the North Andover Citizen, which was a weekly paper at the time, and I said, we need some help from you, and we're going to increase your circulation, because people that don't buy the Citizen now, we're going to buy it because they're going to see their name in the paper. So we talked about it, and they gave us a full page every week for a year.
Wow.
And anyone that was on that special golden list, their name got it put in the paper. And once it was in there for the whole year. Gotcha. So we just the list kept growing and growing and growing. And what happened is people started to see their neighbor's name in there. And I said, well, I got to get my name in the paper.
Right.
I got to be part of this, because I have kids in the program. So we raised probably over the course of the first 4 or 5 months, we probably raised close to $40,000
Wow.
just with that one fundraising.
Again, to remind people, this is $1991.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
31 years ago.
The other part of it that was extremely important, and I really have to make sure that we recognize some of the group that was just as important to the success of this was the high school coaches. There was no money for their salaries. And I can't say 100% of the coaches coach for nothing, but most of the coaches said, okay, I believe in the program. I know next year you're going to be successful. I'll get my salary back next year. Most of the coaches forego their salary, which is probably a third of the budget when you think about it at the time.
Right.
You know, there was busing involved and so forth. But the coaches were supportive, and we got, you know, every month or so we'd have another coach from another sport come in and talk to us and said, how we doing? What? So they bought into the program at the time, and I think that was big too.
Sounds it. One thing that I just, as we were talking, I've been thinking of, so you told us where we started, and I'll tell you where we kind of are today. You know, pretty much what the NAAA does is we kind of fund special requests from teams. So the softball team and the baseball team over the last couple of years, both their pitching machines broke down. They reached out to us to ask us to replace them. We replaced them. We do a couple of scholarships, 4 scholarships a year, and then we also, we pay for the flowers for the senior nights when the moms get their flowers from their student athlete. What was the middle step? Like when you left the organization, what were you doing? Because at some point, budget money reoccurred, and you
Right.
didn't have to fund the whole shebang. Right. So how did it move along, I guess?
Well, the first year there was zero funding, so we funded the whole thing. And what the commitment I made is we have to do it season by season, because I'll commit to you in the fall that we will have fall sports.
Right.
And we will do everything possible to give you an early indication that we can fund winter sports. And as it turned out, the spring is a pretty easy sport to fund.
Right.
You have track, you have baseball, but there's not a lot of, there's some equipment involved,
But no ice rink rentals.
exactly. Referees and so forth. So we were able to do that. And then the second year, there was, I think they got 60% of the funding back in the budget. And by the second year, when I finally said, 24 straight months, I need a break, the budget was back to fully funded, but fully funded with user fees.
Sure.
So, and I think it was Al Perry, but I'm not sure. I said, Al, you've been involved initially, so can you take it for a year, and then your job is to bring on the next bunch of volunteers. And I know you guys are volunteers, so you know how hard it is to get volunteers, but
Sure.
To perpetuate this. And then we started doing exactly the things that you're talking about. So we started to get banners back for teams that won the league and so forth and so on. That had been, again, those things we said, well, we really can't do that yet because we need more important things like
Gotta get
the
athletes
kids on the field.
Right.
Yep.
So, so that middle period. But I guess I'm excited the fact that 31 years later, you guys are still in existence
Still here.
and helping out the high school. I know Steve Nugent, I still am involved in a lot of the activities, sport activities.
You still do the announcing, right?
I still
Which
announce
sports do you do?
basketball, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and soccer once in a while, yeah. So I know how much he appreciates the NAAA and all that you guys do.
Bill, talk about, so you'd mentioned, I think it was Jack Gaffney, who is the
Mm-hmm.
Booster Club president at the time.
He was the president
Yeah.
of the Boosters at the time.
Talk about the relationship with the NAAA and the Boosters and the high school and
Yeah.
just at that time and sort of how it's evolved.
Well, I think it was important that the feeder systems, the Booster Club was a fabulous feeder system for the basketballs and the footballs, and the baseballs, and soccer at the time was a growing sport in town, In 91, I think the Soccer Association had only been in existence maybe for 10 years. So it was a relatively young sport. And, there was always, excuse me, certainly in the spring, for boys, do I play baseball, do I play soccer, and how do we coordinate those things? And Jack was extremely helpful in allowing the Soccer Association to blend itself in to the more traditional sports in the town, which were football, basketball, and baseball. Mm-hmm. And what we decided is that when it came time for the spring, which was really the season that was, football players were generally football players, not soccer players. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the baseball players played soccer in the fall, and they wanted to play soccer in the spring, but they also wanted to play baseball. So we said, okay, we're Saturdays. We play games on Saturdays. If you don't play games on Saturdays, we won't have any conflicts for games. Right. And the coaches in the Soccer Association won't penalize any players for playing in a baseball game during the week and missing their practice. Right. So once we get that word out, and once the coaches in both leagues understood that the presidents were backing what they said, very, very few conflicts and very few, if you will, angry coaches because somebody wasn't at a practice or whatever. We said games will take precedent, and we won't play games on any other day but Saturday. And if we have to have a makeup game, baseball will come first because, again, we were the new kids on the block in the Soccer Association. Yeah. And I think it worked out terrific. And I know even today there are still some conflicts, but I think the working relationship between NASA and the Booster Club is a pretty good one. I hope it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, good communication. Yeah. Lack of being territorial goes a long way for sure. That's great. I mean, now it's like, now everything's intertwined and like you got to skip games, you get benched for skipping, and whether it be baseball or soccer or whatever. But
we eliminated that again at that time. There was no penalty for missing a practice.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of the when I knew we'd be talking to you, one of the thoughts that I had to ask you was, some notable athletes that you've seen over your many years watching North Andover High athletics.
We were playing in the Cape Ann League back then, and it's not a funny story. It's really a story that needs to be told. Is that North Andover was trying to get back into the
MVC.
Merrimack Valley League, and they were 1 year away from that when this happened.
Oh.
So it took about 15 years before they could get back in the league. But we had great, there was Tracy Noonan went on to play at North Carolina.
Olympic team, right? She was Olympic backup goalie.
She was Olympic backup goalie. Mary Bridget Paulett was the National Player of the Year in Division III out of Plymouth State. I know the Cavanaugh boys played football and hockey. The year before this happened, we had the Cheevers boys, all that group were playing hockey for the town. Basketball, there's been some great basketball play. Coach McVeigh would not have been able to play high school basketball at North Andover. He might have gone somewhere else. But, look at what he's done over the years with playing for his dad, but also he played in college at Merrimack, and then the success he's had as coaches. That's the other thing. If you look at the coaches that are at the high school now, Steve Nugent is the athletic director. Kaya Wood, Lisa, my daughter Lisa, Deb Daly. They came up through the program, and that's what you want because, people know them. Hopefully some of the younger kids can say, look at, she came up through the program, and look at where she is now. She's able to be a coach. And I think it's great that we were able to keep that alive because I've always felt, I don't know if you remember, but in 1983 or 4, SMU football got the death penalty.
Yep.
And how many years did it take them?
Right.
Over 20 years before
recover
they had their
fully,
football program back to any type of competitiveness.
Right.
And I said, we can't allow that to happen to these kids. But the other important thing is National Honor Society, yearbook, the band, the math club, all those things would have gone by the wayside. And Emmett Goggin was a big supporter. And I'll tell you one story. He hated high school-wide assemblies.
This is
He
the principal.
Yes,
at the
Emmett
time,
Goggins was the principal. He hated assemblies. He says they're a waste of time. The kids, goof off on the way to the assembly. They goof off, but they're kids. I mean, of course they're going to do that. They're going to talk to their friends and meet in the hallways. I said, Emmett, we need to have an assembly. He says, okay, Bill, what's it for? I said, well, we have a fundraising gold mine here. He said, well, what is it? I said, we've just made a deal with Pepsi-Cola and Methuen that for every can or bottle that we bring them, they're going to give us the 5% refund plus a penny. They're going to give us 6 cents for every can or bottle that we bring back. So he said, okay. We rented one of those 55-foot trailers, parked it in the parking lot. I finally convinced the principal. So we had an assembly. And it's the old field house.
Yeah.
And they had the double-decker, and I mean, all the kids in the school were at the field house. And so Emmett says, okay, we're only going to be here for 15 minutes, and, you behave yourself. We got somebody that wants to challenge you. So I got up there and I said, look I'm going to challenge every single one of you people to do something for your own good, for your own benefit. But every day bring just one can or bottle to the high school when you come. There's going to be volunteers out there that's going to collect them. So as you come in the high school, just throw it in the bin. Just one can or bottle every day. And some of them did, some of them didn't, but that's only natural. But we were getting checks for $1,000, $1,200 every week because we were filling up, and not only were the kids bringing it in, but I know at the time we were, I'd have a bin to throw the bottles. So a trash bag would come to the high school on a Saturday and it would just go in the back of the trailer. And we were getting regular checks. So that was the big thing. We were getting money every week through our fundraisers.
Wish we could do that.
Well, definitely a tremendous amount of creativity as far as fundraising goes. I mean, between that and the car, I can't imagine going to a dealership and saying, I need a car. We need to raise money for the North Andover Athletic Association.
Well, it helped that he had somebody that was going to benefit from that. But true, you're right. I need a car.
Yeah. Any other fundraisers you could think of that? Because these are all fantastic.
I know.
I love hearing the stories.
Yeah. Again, at the time, it was. I went to several cake and brownie sales where we raised $57. Right. But, I had to be there because, you don't want people to get the wrong impression. Any money that we were going to get. Right. We also had one that we refused. Naturally, when the powers to be here that you're raising money, those calendars that you get, and, you can save money.
With the coupons on them.
The coupons on them and so forth. And you can sell the book for $10. I said, oh, that's awesome. Well, we can sell a gazillion of these. And they said, yeah, but you're only going to get $250 of the $10. I said, wait a second. With our mission is we want to get a minimum of 90 cents on the dollar. And a quick antidote. Paul was a fabulous bookkeeper and treasurer for this group. We put back 97 cents out of every dollar.
Wow.
We ran the organization on 3%.
Yeah, that's pretty much stamps.
Yeah, and
Really.
yeah, and that. So anyway, so we said we're not going to do this because you're not going to. He says, well, maybe I can get you 30%. I said, if we're not going to get, 90%, we don't want to. We have our energies have to be spent somewhere else.
Right.
you can make some money, but you're not going to make 70%.
Right.
So we refused that one. And we went out and we got, I don't know if I have any. I probably should will one of them to you if I still have it. But we went out and we said, okay, we need cushions for the seats, the stands. So what we did is we had we had people come up at that NAAA logo, that's 30 years old. That came from the initial organization. So that was on one side of the seat cushion. On the other side, we sold advertising. The business card advertising that you get in some placemats when you go for breakfast. Right. That was on the back of that. We got key rings. We had stickers you could put on your car. So, I mean, the more people saw these things around town, the more they wanted them. Right. So how can I get a seat cushion? I said, we have to donate. That's a free, we'll give you a seat cushion if you donate. Well, how much do I have to donate? I said, well, the minimum for a seat cushion is $100.
There you go. That's how they did it. That's how they got 200 grand.
That's it. 240 grand. Wow. Well, Bill, these stories are unbelievable, and I think anybody who's touched North Andover athletics will appreciate everything you've done. You kind of go back. You talk about SMU, and I was just thinking as you were talking through all of this, like, what if you and Al and the other folks hadn't stepped up back then? Would North Andover athletics have been in that?
Just logically thinking about it, if 1991 there were no sports at North Andover High,
sports or band or anything, extracurricular,
right? So you probably lose in the top 5 to 7% of kids in almost every activity. That they'd go to another school.
Well, we still lost.
Sure.
Rob Conrad went to
Miami Dolphins.
He went to middle school with my daughters, and he went to say, now again, these kids may still have gone private,
but you wouldn't.
But and even that year we lost some very good athletes to private school.
But if that one year there was nothing.
I would talk to people. I said, what about your property values? Who's going to want to come to North Andover and live if there's no sports and activities at your high school?
Right.
It was bad enough at the time the high school was open classrooms. There was no walls at the high school. I don't know if you guys...
My wife went, and it was just almost impossible to learn in some classes.
There was no walls at the high school.
Yeah.
But we forged on, so...
Right. Yeah, it's
great.
Amazing.
Any other parting words or...
I just hope that you guys pass the baton. You guys have done a great job. And again, I'm delighted that we're here 31 years later to talk about the creation of the NAAA. And I hope I'm here in another 10 years to talk about the 41st year of the NAAA.
Yeah. Well, this has been inspirational for me. It kind of makes me want to work a little bit harder to try to raise more funds for the high school. I know
we've got our big race coming up in October. We're going to start hitting people with the fundraising requests soon.
Yeah, so. I saw the Feaster 5 registration open up on my phone last week, so we gotta we gotta jump on that.
That's right.
No, I know, and obviously with Steve Nugent having his first year under his belt, knows the value of the North Andover Athletic Association and what we've brought and what we can bring in the future. And we talked about this last time. He has big plans, big ideas, big hopes, and we'll do everything we can to try to help him achieve his goals. And speaking of Steve, our next podcast, Steve will be our special guest, so we'll get his thoughts on his first year as athletic director, what he's learned, and where he hopes to take North Andover Athletics over the coming months and years to come. So with that said, thank you everybody for listening to the North Andover Athletic Association's Nightly News Podcast. Al and I will see you back here next time. Thanks
again, Bill.
Yeah,
thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.